Hi, my name is Sandrine Somé, and today we're going to be talking about branding as part of Module 4. So, to give a little bit of an introduction and a background on who I am, I work as a creative director, a producer, and an entrepreneur, founding my own brands, Nile Coffee Club and Estrella Sound. So my journey kind of started in art direction, really working as a social media content strategist, working a lot in analytics. And then from there, I really wanted to understand what it meant to lead with insights, with strategy. So I went back to school, to the Miami Ad School, and then left with an understanding that really brought me to the intersection of creative strategy, which is really what I do day to day. So what we're going to be talking about today is really branding and everything that encompasses. So to begin, when we're thinking about what it means to have a brand, we're talking about the logo, the typography, fonts. We're talking about your cup design, the tone and voice, the mission, the vision, the values. And these are all really important things to consider as you're building this. In my job, what we do is we begin with everything at the top, which is strategy. So that's really defining the core of who you are, who you service, what you do. And so I included a couple examples that you're going to see on screen. And the first one is essentially our brand guideline. That's the cover. So when you go into that, it shows the covers, the icons, the different fonts that make the essence of what Nile stands for, right? And then that carries all the way into the cup designs that you're seeing, ceramic cups, the in-store cup sticker design, and then that carries all the way through the merch, packaging design, everything, our loyalty cards. You notice that there is a common thread, not only from a color standpoint, but aesthetically and also from the editorial type of photography that we take. So these are all considerations that you need to keep in mind as you are building this out. Now, what does it mean to really build the brand? What are the steps? And also, why does it matter? I think a lot of people think that you can kind of just get away with, you know what, I have a great product, I have a great store, I have a great presence in the community, and that should be enough. While this is really great, what we're finding from a research standpoint is that brands that actually are like branded or have created an ecosystem where it's more recognizable, they are actually more trustworthy, which leads to more sales, which leads to more word of mouth, which leads to just a bigger community, right? So that's why branding really matters. Then when we talk about the steps that you need to take to really build this, like I said, it starts at the top, right? It starts with understanding who are you even speaking to and what is the value that you bring to them? And that's really the demographics, right? The audience profile. And so I think for brick and mortar, for retail, we don't necessarily need to go as in depth when it comes to really that customer profile, but it is important to really consider it because at the end of the day, the people that you're serving are the community that you're building. And I always believe that 20% of your consumers end up making about 80% of your revenue, right? So who is that? Then we want to focus on really defining your core values. When we talk about defining your values, it's the why. Why did you even start this business? What is the reasoning or behind the products that you're creating, or what is the differentiator? And that's why it's really important because nowadays it's so easy to start a brand. Anyone can create a Shopify, anyone can go on Canva, anyone can ask their cousin to do some graphic design and create an identity, but that doesn't mean that you're really defined or differentiated in the market. So that's why it's important to get really clear on your core values. So on the screen, you'll see now I provided a couple of examples, again, within this world of Nile that really showcase how we come about to brand strategy and why that's important. So at the top of this pyramid is really the core functional benefits, or your core beliefs, I should say. And so that's really for us, coffee as a creative catalyst. And for other brands, that's different because maybe they're selling coffee as part of your daily grind or really to wake you up, make sure that you got the energy to go to work. We've chosen a different path because our audience is more for the creative community. So that's the core difference and the core belief that we have. Then when you move down to our why, we're doing it because we believe that people need to focus on their passions. So often in our language, we'll say, we're coffee that's not for your 9 to 5, it's for your 5 to 9. And so even in that language, you're kind of understanding like, okay, it's for people who maybe just work their day-to-day job, but they have a side passion, they have a side hustle, they're maybe an entrepreneur, they're building something for themselves. And that's really the people that we are looking to speak to. Then a level down from that is your how. That's your functional benefit. So we do fresh, small batch roasted coffee. And that really differentiates us from, let's say, a Starbucks or a Tim Hortons, which is way larger corporation that kind of has a more mass offering. We're going for the more premium specialty small batch, right? And then your what is really just defining the core different pillars that hold up everything that we just spoke about, right? So for us, again, a coffee that meets you in the moment, roasted with care. We have a broader community because we're speaking to the Black community specifically. That's why we started it, a big part of it as well. And also we are all 3 DJs. So we have different things like we have a monthly radio show. Again, creativity, we really value books, learning. So we have a monthly workshop where we essentially curate different books that people can read that are part of this book club. So these are all the different facets that this business comes to life, not only offline, but in person, right? And then the next part here that I have is voice and tone. It's really important to define how it is that you're speaking, right? And so words that we've chosen are magnetic, grounded, thoughtful, and how this comes to life is in our communication, not only with the way our staff speaks to our customers, but also online, how we're writing captions, how the copy on our website and how that's defined. And this is really where that comes to life. After this, what we're going to focus on now is really the in-store elements of your brand. And so what does that mean? It can be anything from signage to the layout and design to product packaging. These are all different elements of how people are first interacting with it, right? And why it's really important is for someone who's walking down the street and you may say, hey, I'm kind of interested in this, but I'm not sure what it is that they sell. So your signage outside is a really key way of attracting people to kind of bring them in and to showcase what it is that you stand for when you have 3 seconds to make a first impression, right? Now they've stepped in. Your layout, the store design, that is another way of really reflecting back to what we said when we talk about Apple as an example, clean, minimal design, where you go to the Eaton Center and across anywhere in the world, you can really see a clearly defined brand identity and how it comes to play with the interaction with the store uniforms, the design of the store, the way that you move through the layout. These are all things that are really key. Next, we're going to talk about consistency. And so when I speak about consistency, I think it's really about creating a document for yourself or a place, like I mentioned, those brand guidelines where anyone that wants to work with your brand, you can easily say, hey, here it is. These are the keys to the kingdom, and you can really understand what I stand for, how I'd like to be perceived. If we're collaborating, how it is that you can place your brand next to mine. If you have this document defined, then you can avoid a lot of mistakes or errors or any friction around your brand and the storytelling that comes with it. So again, I have some examples of different brand work that's been created around, let's say, Wuxley, who is a past client. And so for them, this is one of their personas, right? So in this document, you have your personas, the colors, the fonts, the everything, but it really starts at the top with the strategy and who you're for. So this is a clear example. And you'll notice here, we have different platforms or different demographic info about who this person is, where does she exist in person, and also where does she exist online. And these things are really great to understand because then if you're looking to do social media advertising or just regular advertising or even a giveaway, promotions, contests, then you can understand, hey, where is the best place for me to display all this information and where does my consumer live online and offline? Another key part is really the visual standpoint. So you'll notice here I have a lot of the representation as it relates to the colors, the fonts, the textures, all of that, right? So when we're speaking about colors, this is a really important thing as well, because you want people to understand what are my primary colors, secondary colors, tertiary colors, because that comes into play across the board. Same thing with fonts. This is just a really clear example. It doesn't have to be too much work, but just defining what are the different fonts that encapsulate my brand. And finally, if there's different use cases, right? So in this case, this is an apparel brand, so they have apparel usages and how the logo gets displayed across those different points. Now, how does it really work to shape branding as it relates to your customer experience? Customer experience is everything from the first impressions to engaging stories that you're really telling, and then also branded touch points. So when we're looking at a storefront design, like I mentioned, the front of the window, the information that you're displaying there, the way that your customers are relating to your employees, the different key, tone, voice, things that you're really engaging them with from the moment that they look at you. First impressions really matter. And so even think about it from a trust standpoint. Wouldn't you trust a storefront that looked clean, inviting, exciting, as opposed to something where it's a little bit empty, you're not too sure if they're open, the lighting is maybe a little bit off? I think when it comes to sales, you'll definitely go with the brand that you trust more and that looks like they are really presenting themselves with their best foot forward. Same as anyone that you meet in person, right? I think there's a key connector and trust that happens when you look at someone in person and they just dress to impress, right? As opposed to showing up a little bit more disheveled. Not to say they're not a good person or not to say they don't have a great product to sell, but who are you going to gravitate towards more, right? And then there's different things to consider in your store from just the five senses and how people interact with that. That is always just good to remember. And so none of this has to cost a lot, right? I think branding has this stereotype sometimes that it's very, very expensive, and it absolutely can be. But if you're looking for cost-effective ways to do this, consider a platform like Canva or Creative Market, or you could even go to Fiverr and hire someone to do all of this for you, right? So there's a lot of low cost-effective ways to actually create this ecosystem for yourself and then to really delegate that to different people, whether it's a social media coordinator, whether it's your store manager, whether it's even a friend. Do you know what I mean? There's different ways to bring this brand to life that do not need to cost a lot of money. And then now we're just ending on a couple exercises that are really meant to allow you to audit your business where it's at today and find ways that you can evolve. So audit your brand identity. Do you even have one? Do you feel like you're telling a compelling story? Do you feel like it's easy for people to really understand what it is that you're trying to say? Creating that brand guide, like I mentioned, if you have it, look at it and say, okay, if I pass this off to someone, am I really translating that vision, or do a couple of things need to be tweaked? And then finally, when you're really doing that storytelling and consistency audit, what does it mean for the story that I'm telling? And again, as I hand this off to someone, because it's always the other person, right? You may understand this very clearly for yourself because you started your business, you are an expert in your field, but it doesn't mean that other people really clearly understand what it is that you're trying to say. So take a moment to just look through these different exercises, take a beat, write it down, and then come back and really see if you're hitting all the different points that we spoke about during this presentation.